Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Donald Trump has dropped a new bombshell. He wants to occupy Gaza, raze it to the ground and rebuild it into the Riviera of West Asia. What about the 2 million odd people who live there? Well, they will have to leave, maybe go to neighboring countries. You can imagine the reaction, but we'll bring you the details anyway. He's also threatened to obliterate Iran. We will tell you why. Meanwhile, in the US, their infamous spy agency, the CIA, is going for a makeover. They've told their staff to take 8 months' pay and leave, or they could be fired later. In India, a US military craft carrying illegal migrants lands in the city of Amritsar. We'll tell you what happens next. Also, a report on the controversial past of USAID, from meddling to terror funding, what we know about the worst mass shooting in Sweden's history, why OpenAI CEO Sam Altman is in India and calling it an incredibly important market, why Indian women are betting big on the stock market in record numbers, in fact. The life and legacy of Aga Khan. He has died at the age of 88. And foods that won't fly, from pickles to peanut butter, and now 11 tons of kimchi confiscated at South Korean airports. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Lawmakers in the Philippines vote to impeach Vice President Sara Duterte, who has fallen out with President Marcos Jr. This paves the way for a Senate trial that could see Duterte removed from office. She has been accused of plotting to assassinate the president and corruption. Shots fired outside a metro station in Belgium's capital, Brussels. Police launch a manhunt for at least 2 gunmen carrying automatic rifles. After the shooting, the suspects fled inside the station and entered the tunnels. No injuries have been reported. The incident is not being considered a terrorist attack. In India, polling for the Delhi Assembly elections ends. The voter turnout was just above 57%. It's a 3-way contest between the BJP, the Aam Aadmi Party and the Congress Party. The Aam Aadmi Party is eyeing a 3rd consecutive term. The results will be declared on Saturday. The Kremlin dismisses the Ukrainian president's readiness for talks as empty words after Volodymyr Zelensky said he was willing to hold direct talks with Vladimir Putin. Last week, the Russian president did not rule out talks with Ukraine, but said he won't speak directly with Zelensky to end the nearly 3-year-long war. And M23 fighters and Rwandan forces launch a new offensive in the eastern DR Congo. They seize a mining town near the provincial capital. Intense clashes break out at dawn between the Rwanda-backed rebel group and the Congolese armed forces. This comes just a day after the M23 rebels announced a unilateral ceasefire.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy. The Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad. This could be so magnificent.
You can put a real estate mogul in the White House, but you cannot take real estate out of him. President Donald Trump has proven that. Yesterday, he hosted the Prime Minister of Israel, his best buddy, Benjamin Netanyahu. After the talks, both men addressed the press, and Trump unveiled his plan for Gaza, a classic realtor's tactic: remove the people, demolish what remains, and rebuild the whole place.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different.
This is unprecedented stuff. Trump wants the US to take over the Gaza Strip. He wants to raze all the buildings, dismantle the explosives, and create new housing societies. There are two obvious problems with the plan. One, Gaza is Palestinian land. It does not belong to the United States or Donald Trump. And two, Gaza is not empty either. 2 million Palestinians live in Gaza. What will happen to them? President Trump seems least bothered about that. He suggested that neighboring Arab countries will host them, countries like Jordan and Egypt. I know this sounds absurd and imperialist already, but it gets worse. Trump gave a long explanation for why this plan is necessary. Not strategic convenience, not humanitarian concerns. Trump says Gaza is unlucky.
I also strongly believe that the Gaza Strip, which has been a symbol of death and destruction for so many decades and so bad for the people anywhere near it, and especially those who live there, and frankly, who's been really very unlucky. It's been very unlucky. It's been an unlucky place for a long time.
That's the realtor speaking again. But do not worry. Gaza is only unlucky for Palestinians. For everybody else, it's perfect beachfront property. That's what Trump is pitching here. He wants to turn Gaza into the Riviera of West Asia. Listen to this.
And I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad. This could be so magnificent.
Trump says he has pitched this plan to West Asian leaders, and he says they'll love it. But we're not so sure. Arab leaders have already rejected this plan. They say Gazans should not be pushed out. In fact, Jordan has gone one step ahead. They are ready for war to prevent the displacement of Gazans, because Jordan would be the worst affected. Around 3 million Palestinians already live in Jordan. The kingdom cannot host more. So the Arab position is pretty clear. Don't even think about it. Even America's Western allies have rejected the plan. France, Germany, Spain, all of them have opposed it. They say Gazans must stay in Gaza. China and Russia are also on the same page. Moscow called it the cancellation of Palestine, and China said it opposes forced relocation. Which makes you wonder, is anyone supporting Trump's plan? The answer is yes, Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu looked quite happy, maybe even surprised by what he heard. At best, he was hoping for political support from President Trump, but what he got was permission to wipe out Gaza, to kick out all the Palestinians.
President Trump is taking it to a much higher level. He sees a different future for that piece of land that has been the focus of so much terrorism, so many attacks against us, so many trials and so many tribulations. He has a different idea, and I think it's worth paying attention to this.
Well, this is a bonus for Netanyahu. His political future was hanging in the balance. His recent truce deal was not acceptable to his allies at home. Plus, his war goals were unmet. You see, Hamas is still calling the shots in Gaza, so Netanyahu's war was being called pointless and genocidal. But Donald Trump has thrown him a lifeline. His far-right allies love this Riviera plan. If enacted, it would end all hopes for a Palestinian state. But here's the crazy idea. Ask the Palestinians. For Israel, Gaza may be a piece of land. For Trump, it may be beachfront property. But for Gazans, it is their homeland. And they do not plan to leave it.
We are staying steadfast in our land here. Who wants to rebuild should not kick us out under the pretext of rebuilding. You helped Israel in the first place in this destruction that we can see here. How could a Palestinian who holds the Palestinian nationality and whose all ancestors died on this soil go to Egypt, Jordan, or any other country? These are rejected statements, and it will not pass on the Palestinian people. This president, who is called Donald Trump, comes to us with a new method to displace us from our country where we are rooted. This is our land. We will not get out of it.
So nobody likes this plan. Not the Palestinians, not the Arabs, not the Europeans, not the Russians or the Chinese. Only Donald Trump likes it. And how will this proposal affect the region? What does it mean for West Asia? Let's look at the three possible impacts it could have. Number one, a setback to the Gaza ceasefire deal. The second stage of talks are slated to begin soon, but Trump's comments will undermine it because any deal is built on trust. Why would Hamas negotiate if the plan is to relocate Gazans, to turn Gaza into some resort town? So Trump's proposal endangers the existing truce. That's impact number one. Impact number two, a setback on Arab-Israel normalization. Saudi Arabia has made its position clear today: no Palestinian state, no normalization. In fact, let me quote from their statement. His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince and Prime Minister, emphasized that Saudi Arabia will continue its relentless efforts to establish an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital and will not establish diplomatic relations with Israel without that. So Israel cannot have it both ways, which brings us to impact number three. The pretense is gone. The US was never serious about a two-state solution. They just want a strong and thriving Israel. Other presidents sugar-coated this position. Donald Trump is just being blunt about it. Because this plan is a death blow to Palestinian statehood. It is textbook ethnic cleansing. If Trump gets his way, it would weaken the global system further. It would erode concepts of sovereignty and territorial integrity. Because this is geopolitics. We deal with countries and people here, not properties and tenants.
Restore a maximum pressure policy on the Iranian regime. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. I would love to be able to make a great deal.
US President Donald Trump wasn't done with just Gaza. He made another move in West Asia, this time against Iran. Trump has restored a policy from his first term, his maximum pressure policy. Now, some of you may know that Iran is not very fond of Donald Trump. There was allegedly a plot last year before the US presidential election, an Iranian plot to assassinate Trump. It was thwarted last September, but the suspected assassin is still at large, and now Trump has decided to ramp up pressure on Iran. He was asked if he feared another Iranian attempt on his life after he brought back his maximum pressure policy. And this was Donald Trump's response.
If they did that, they would be obliterated. That would be the end. I've left instructions. If they do it, they get obliterated. There won't be anything left.
Mr. President, when you said if they do it, they get obliterated. Just to be clear, you're talking about if Iran made an attempt on your life.
Yeah, that would be called total obliteration.
Trump says he has left instructions. If Iran manages to kill him, he has directed the US to quote-unquote obliterate the country. It's quite the threat. But why was it even being discussed? Why would Iran want to kill Donald Trump? Well, his maximum pressure policy would bring a world of hurt for Tehran. So there's always the fear that Iran could retaliate, especially considering what happened the last time. Iran signed a deal back in 2015 when Barack Obama was US president. It was conventionally known as the Iran nuclear deal. But Donald Trump tore it up unilaterally during his first term as president. He replaced it with sanctions and increased scrutiny of Iran's activities, both nuclear and otherwise. This was his first maximum pressure policy. It caused Iran's economy to crash, bringing hardship to everyone in the country, both the government and the ordinary people. This policy was in effect during all of Trump's first term, and the sanctions stayed even after he left. Joe Biden continued with Trump's policies despite trying to negotiate another Iran nuclear deal. He couldn't. And it doesn't matter now because Trump would have torn it up anyway. So now we are back to maximum pressure, and Iran is in for another bruising. First, let's look at the policy itself. It has three broad goals. Point one, Iran should be denied a nuclear weapon and intercontinental ballistic missile. Point two, Iran's terrorist network should be neutralized. And point 3, Iran's aggressive development of missiles as well as other asymmetric and conventional weapons capabilities should be countered. This is broadly what the deal says, what the policy says. Now, points 1 and 2 are straightforward. Iran cannot be allowed to build a nuclear weapon or an ICBM, which is an intercontinental ballistic missile, a missile that can travel over 5,000 kilometers. Officially, Iran does not have these ICBMs. It has a number of short and medium-range missiles, but no ICBMs, and Trump wants to make sure that they cannot build one. He also wants to go after Iran's proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, and the Iran-backed militias in Iraq and Syria. The US wants to neutralize all of them. And then we have the last point. Iran's aggressive development of missiles, as well as other asymmetric and conventional weapons capabilities, should be countered. What does that even mean? Effectively, the US wants Iran to disarm itself completely. No more weapons, no more military activities. They want Iran to become a sitting duck. Do you really think Iran would ever agree to this? Would any sovereign nation? Best case scenario, they will shelve their nuclear ambitions. And Trump understands this because that is all that he seemed to care.
They cannot have a nuclear weapon. With me, it's very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. We don't want to be tough on Iran. We don't want to be tough on anybody, but they just can't have a nuclear weapon.
The second part of that statement was quite interesting. Trump said he does not want to be, quote unquote, tough on Iran.
Iran situation, hopefully, I'm going to sign it, but hopefully we're not going to have to use it very much. We will see whether or not we can arrange or work out a deal with Iran and everybody can live together, and maybe that's possible and maybe it's not possible. So I'm signing this and I'm unhappy to do it.
That was before he signed the order. But even afterwards, while he was standing next to Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu, Trump said this.
I say this, and I say this to Iran, who's listening very intently. I would love to be able to make a great deal, a deal where you can get on with your lives and you'll do wonderfully. You'll do wonderfully. Incredible people, industrious, beautiful, just an unbelievable group of people in Iran.
Netanyahu was right next to him as Trump called Iranians incredible people. Perhaps that is what prompted Netanyahu to remind Trump about this.
We also see eye to eye on Iran. That's the same Iran that tried to kill us both. They tried to kill you, Mr. President. They tried through their proxies to kill me. We're both committed to rolling back Iran's aggression in the region and ensuring that Iran never develops a nuclear weapon.
Netanyahu was talking about the alleged Iranian plot to assassinate Trump, almost reminding him that Iran was his enemy. And how is Tehran dealing with all of this? Listen to what their foreign minister had to say.
I think maximum pressure is a failed experience, and testing it again will lead to another failure. If the main issue is stopping Iran from pursuing nuclear weapons, well, this is something achievable. This is not too difficult. Iran is a committed member of the NPT, and its stances are clear. Also, there is a fatwa by the Supreme Leader that has made things clear for us.
He said the maximum pressure policy failed in the past and it will fail again. However, he did seem to offer an olive branch, saying if the main issue was to stop Iran from getting nukes, it was achievable, and that Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has issued a fatwa against nukes. So it would not be too difficult to reassure Trump, to convince him that nukes were off the table. Now, all of this should be taken with a fistful of salt, because Iran is still enriching uranium and trying to produce weapons-grade nuclear fuel. If push comes to shove, Iran may choose to build nukes, because if nothing else, they would be a massive deterrent. But all that is in the realm of speculation for now. The fact is, Trump has reimposed his maximum pressure policy. His expectations are sky high. But if Iran actually stops its nuclear program, will the US back off? Or are nuclear weapons just an excuse to continue crippling Iran? We will see in the coming months. Our next story is about the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, America's most secretive spy agency. The CIA has been a paradox, hidden in plain sight, operating where it shouldn't. For decades, it has shaped global conflicts, it has toppled governments and brokered peace, all without so much as a press release. But now the CIA is making headlines. Why? Because Donald Trump is giving it a makeover. The agency has sent buyout offers to its entire workforce. All employees working in the CIA, they have two choices: take the deal and leave the agency behind. They would walk away with 8 months of pay and benefits, or they can stay put and wait for layoffs. It's a tough choice for anyone, even tougher for America's top spies. How many people will this affect? The exact number of people working in the CIA is classified. However, estimates suggest around 20,000 to 22,000 employees. Now, this offer is not a new one. US federal employees received a similar one last week. Trump wants to downsize the US government. The plan is to cut down federal spending. But intelligence agencies were initially spared. After all, their work does not fit the typical bureaucratic mold. But the new CIA director thinks different. His name is John Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe wants the CIA in on this plan. And he has two main goals: to align the CIA with the new administration's priorities and to infuse the agency with renewed energy.
I will unapologetically empower the most talented, hardest working, and most courageous risk takers and innovators to protect the American people and advance America's interests. And I will not tolerate anything or anyone that distracts from our mission.
Well, that's the official explanation, but reports suggest something deeper: a purge. Trump and his aides have long accused the CIA. They say the officers are part of the deep state, a shadowy bureaucracy working against him. So now Trump wants a new CIA, one that aligns with his vision. But there's a catch. The logistics remain murky. The buyout offer was sent to the entire workforce, but not everyone can just walk away. Some operations are too classified to be disrupted. Some missions have been running for years and cannot be abandoned now. Certain personnel, especially spies, could be exempt. And here's the real kicker. John Ratcliffe holds the power. He decides who stays, he decides who goes, and he decides when. How will this impact American intelligence? Let's look at the CIA's history first. It was born in the aftermath of World War II, emerging from the Wartime Office of Strategic Services. In the year 1947, then US President Harry Truman signed the National Security Act, officially establishing it as America's primary spy agency. The mission was clear: collect intelligence, conduct covert operations, and act as America's first line of defense. Soon the CIA became the invisible architect of American influence. It orchestrated coups in Iran and Latin America. It smuggled Soviet missile blueprints. In fact, it fueled the Cold War's shadow battles, trained the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, and killed Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. Its victories are often buried in classified files, but its failures, well, they play out on the world stage. Like the Bay of Pigs, it was a CIA-led operation aimed at overthrowing Cuba's Fidel Castro. They failed, and it embarrassed the United States government. Which brings us to the CIA's relationship with the White House. It is complicated at best. Some presidents relied heavily on it, the likes of John F. Kennedy and George W. Bush. Others tried to restrain its reach, like Barack Obama. But Trump has chosen an unpredictable approach. He wants the CIA of his dreams, and he can have it, but at what cost? A mass exodus could cripple intelligence operations, especially if experienced officers quit. It could disrupt missions, weaken response times, and strain alliances that rely on US intelligence. Plus, critics believe expertise may take a backseat to political loyalty. So will this overhaul create a leaner, more efficient CIA, or will it leave America's intelligence apparatus vulnerable at a time of rising global threats? Honestly, we don't know that yet. But here's what we can say. For the CIA that may have seen it all, this makeover is unlike any threat it has dealt with in the past. Donald Trump's deportation drive hit a new milestone today. The US president sent a military jet to India carrying over 100 undocumented immigrants from India. This is the furthest a US military deportation flight has ever gone. The US has deported Indians before. More than 1,000 of them were sent home last year, but they were sent back via charter or commercial flights. It was far more subtle. Trump doesn't care about subtlety, though. He seems to want to make a show of it, a show of his mass deportation drive in action, and that is probably why he prefers deportations via military aircraft. A C-17 Globemaster III landed in India today at the international airport in Amritsar in the state of Punjab. Reports say it brought back 104 undocumented immigrants. Let's look at the breakup. There were 25 women and 79 men. Out of the 104 migrants, 12 were minors, 33 were from the state of Gujarat, 33 from Haryana, 30 from Punjab, 2 from the Union Territory of Chandigarh, 2 from Uttar Pradesh, and 3 from Maharashtra. One person's place of origin is still unknown. All these people landed in Amritsar earlier today. Reports say they were greeted in a friendly manner. A team of doctors was said to be on standby. Arrangements were made for food. One official who greeted them hinted that they may not have been fed well. It looked like they hadn't seen hot food in ages, which probably should be expected. These were undocumented immigrants, after all, people who tried to enter the US illegally or who overstayed their welcome after their visas expired. So it makes sense that the US would not feed them well. The Punjab government did some due diligence, checked if any of them had a criminal history. Those found to be harmless will be sent home, back to their respective states, apparently in mini buses. But before that, they will be questioned. All said and done, these Indians were in the US illegally, or at least trying to get in. How did they do that? Who helped them enter? Were human traffickers involved? All these questions are questions that Indian authorities want answered. Once the officials extract all the information they can, the migrants will be sent home. The Punjab police say there won't be any detentions. The migrants will be sent home, quote unquote, respectfully. Now, this is similar to other deportation stories from other parts of the world. Last week, in fact, we told you about Guatemala. The US sent multiple deportation flights to the Central American nation. Again, military planes. Guatemala's vice president greeted the first batch of migrants in person, welcoming them back home. It seems that India is doing the same thing, warmly receiving the immigrants and not creating much of a fuss. After all, this might all blow over soon. As I mentioned, India has always taken back undocumented immigrants. India took back more than 1,000 last year, so this is nothing new. Today's flight carried 104 people. There's a lot more to go. India has agreed to take back at least 18,000 migrants from the United States. So today was just the beginning. But will the next batches also come via military jets? The military deportation flights are good optics for Trump, but how long will that last? They aren't free, you know. Reports say they're more expensive than the usual commercial deportation flights, by far. So chances are that Trump will stop using them soon enough, once the novelty wears off. Then it will probably go back to charter and commercial deportation flights, and India will return to taking back its citizens quietly. Illegal migration is Trump's enemy number one, but if you go down that list, you will find an unlikely name: USAID, the American government's charity arm. It's the biggest donor in the world. It manages 60 missions in 130 nations. But Trump is slowly killing it. All USAID staff have been placed on leave. Foreign aid has been frozen and their website has been taken down. Trump's justification is ideological. He says USAID was run by radical left lunatics. But politics aside, there is plenty to dig up here, because USAID has a sketchy side too. They have meddled in other countries, funded radicals and run covert operations. We'll start with the radical funding. USAID has given money to a group called FIF, the Faleh-e-Insaniyat Foundation. FIF, it is based in Pakistan. It is basically a front for Lashkar-e-Toiba, the same terror group behind the 26/11 Mumbai attacks. USAID was indirectly funding them. In the year 2021, they gave $110,000 to a Michigan charity, a group called Helping Hand. And this charity shared ties with Pakistan's FIF. At the time, this donation was flagged. USAID also launched an internal probe into it because the FIF was a banned group. Yet in 2023, more money was given, around $78,000 to the same Michigan charity. Was this oversight or was it planned? Either way, it should not have happened. Aid should go to people who need it, not charities linked to terrorists and radicals. And this is just one example. Washington has always used aid to further its agenda. It was never about charity, it was about politics. I have some examples for you. In Cuba, USAID created a social media platform in 2010. It was called Zunzuneo, sort of like a Cuban Twitter. At first, it focused on music, sports, and weather, but the end goal was sinister: to influence Cuban youth, to stir trouble and trigger street protests. But media investigations exposed this plan. Soon, the platform was shut down. Example number 2 is Bolivia. USAID funded opposition groups in this country. The goal was to destabilize its then president, Evo Morales. And Morales was a socialist leader. His policies were seen as anti-American, so USAID quietly undermined him. In 2013, Morales had had enough. He expelled USAID from the country. Example number 3 is Peru. In the 1990s, the country ran a sterilization program. Around 200,000 women were forcibly sterilized, again with funding from USAID. And these are just just 3 prominent examples. Dozens of countries have accused USAID of meddling. Russia, Nicaragua, Iran, Honduras, the list goes on. And the agency does not just meddle, it imposes American ideology on other countries. That's what happened in Brazil in the year 2005. The US offered $40 million to Brazil. The money was supposed to fight AIDS, but Brazil rejected the money because the funds came with conditions. Brazil had to embrace anti-abortion and abstinence policies. So their government said no. At that time, the US president was George Bush. More recently, Joe Biden tried the same thing. He funded all sorts of diversity policies abroad.
These are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do.
Aid is a big tool of foreign policy. It may look like a large-hearted campaign, but it comes with strings attached. Just ask India. In 1965, USAID gave a loan to India. The plan was to set up a fertilizer plant in Chennai. But the loan came with conditions. Only a US company would handle the distribution and no other fertilizer plant would be built nearby. Such aid based on conditions was the norm back then. India finally started rejecting them in 2004. Still, USAID runs multiple campaigns here. In 2024, they donated around $141 million to India, which is slightly lower than the previous year when it was $153 million. And what's the status of these campaigns now? Well, all of them have been frozen. In the short term, there will be some pain, but experts also see an opportunity here, especially in South Asia. Countries in this region have traditionally depended on 2 sources, Chinese loans and US aid. One has been stopped, the other is untenable. So maybe India could step up to the plate, offer assistance where necessary. Of course, the rules of charity apply to India as well. You can keep your interests in mind, but you cannot undermine others. Now let's talk about Sweden. The Nordic country has witnessed its deadliest gun attack in history. It happened in the city of Örebro, which is west of the capital Stockholm. A gunman entered an adult education center and opened fire. At least 11 people have died, including the shooter, and several others are injured. So who was the perpetrator? What was the motive behind the attack? And how are people reacting to this tragedy that has sent shockwaves through Sweden? Here is a report.
Sweden is in shock. Authorities are still searching for answers after a deadly shooting attack unfolded on Tuesday. At least 11 people were killed and at least 6 were wounded in what the government has called the worst mass shooting in the country's history.
It is difficult to take in the magnitude of what has happened today, the darkness that is now falling over Sweden tonight. Today we have seen a brutal, deadly violence against completely innocent people. This is the worst mass shooting in Swedish history.
It happened at an adult education center in the city of Örebro, home to about 100,000 people, 200 kilometers west of the capital, Stockholm. Gunfire erupted around noon local time. The school offers classes to about 2,000 adults, many of whom are immigrants seeking qualifications to help them find jobs in the Nordic country. Some students were in class, while others were having lunch when the gunman began firing. Students cowered under their desks. Authorities soon responded. Police cars arrived. Armed officers swarmed the campus. Nearby schools were put on lockdown. When the officers reached, the suspected gunman was already dead, after having claimed 10 other victims.
When the police arrived, there was gunfire. The perception was also that they got fired upon initially. When the search was then carried out inside the premises, the perpetrator was found dead.
The police are still in the process of identifying the victims, and they have opened an investigation. They are looking into murder, arson, and an aggravated weapons offense, but they claim this was a one-man operation. So who was the perpetrator? The details are not clear yet. But according to reports, it was a 35-year-old unemployed recluse. The police say there were no prior warning signs. The perpetrator was not previously known to the police. And there is strong evidence that the gunman shot himself. Though it's not clear what the suspect's exact motives were behind the attack. Swedish media reports are rife with rumors about ideological motives to attack a school educating immigrants, but the police have dismissed such talk.
Another bit that is important and that everyone can take responsibility for is to only spread confirmed information. Rumors and speculation are something that only creates more anxiety in an already anxious time.
It's an anxious time for Sweden indeed. The country has high living standards. It was long known for low crime rates, but now it has one of the highest per capita rates of gun violence in the European Union. Even so, mass gun attacks or school attacks are rare in the country. And today, as people woke up to sheer shock and pain, the country is grieving victims of its deadliest gun attack. Candles and flowers have been placed near the school where the incident took place. Flags are flying at half-mast in Örebro, as well as the Parliament and the Royal Palace in Stockholm. The Prime Minister met with the Justice Minister and the police authority. The Swedish King and Queen have visited the school and attended a memorial service. The attack has sent shockwaves through Sweden, and the country is coming together in mourning, hoping that this tragedy doesn't repeat itself.
"2024 gave us the Eras tour. 2025 is giving us the AI tour, and leading it is OpenAI CEO Sam Altman. He is on a charm offensive, heading to multiple countries. The tour includes Japan, South Korea, India, the United Arab Emirates, France, and Germany. It's quite the itinerary. So Altman has his hands full. In Japan, he unveiled a joint venture with SoftBank. In South Korea, OpenAI clinched a deal with tech giant Kakao. And now Sam Altman is in India. He met IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav. He spoke about India's AI potential and how it is an incredible market for artificial intelligence.
India is an incredibly important market for AI in general, for OpenAI in particular. It's our second biggest market, tripled users here in the last year. but mostly seeing what people in India are building with AI at all levels of the stack, chips, models, all of the incredible applications. So I think India should be doing everything. I think India should be one of the leaders of the AI revolution. It's really quite amazing to see what the country has done and embraced the technology and building, again, the entire stack of things on top of it.
All good things to say, but it's quite the shift for Sam Altman. He last visited India in 2023. Then he was asked about India's chances of building an AI model, of making one at a lower cost with a smaller team. Back then, Sam Altman called it a hopeless pursuit, something that India could not achieve. But here he is now saying those comments were taken out of context and that India has immense potential. So what explains this pivot? Why exactly is Sam Altman in India? There are three reasons for this visit. Number one is India's market size. The US is ChatGPT's biggest market. Guess which is the second largest? It's India. OpenAI has tripled its users here in 2024. So this is a huge market for the company, which means more investment opportunities. That's the first reason. The second reason is a copyright lawsuit. It is by India's top news agencies against OpenAI. The lawsuit accuses OpenAI of improperly using copyrighted content, like scraping material from news websites and then reproducing it. OpenAI wants to block this lawsuit. It cited US routes to dodge Indian courts, but lawyers believe the case can be heard here. So Sam Altman is likely to address this issue before OpenAI gets more bad press. Which brings us to the third and final reason, China's DeepSeek. Its AI models are taking the world by storm. They're cheap, they're open source, and they're on par with OpenAI. China showed the world that cheap AI models are indeed possible. You don't need billions of dollars or the most cutting-edge technology to build them. All you need is a good foundation, and it's something that India is hoping to replicate with its own indigenous AI models.
Our young entrepreneurs, our startups, our researchers, they are really focused on getting that next level of innovation, which will reduce the cost. See, our country sent a mission to the moon at a fraction of the cost that many other countries did, right? Why can't we do a model which will be a fraction of the cost that many other countries do?
So Sam Altman has a lot on his plate, which explains his charm offensive. He's working overtime to prove that OpenAI is still the best. But while he's focused on keeping his company ahead, China is moving faster. DeepSeek is gaining serious momentum. Chinese chip makers and cloud providers are all rallying behind it. Beijing is eager to boost their own AI ecosystem. Some are even calling it a watershed moment for this industry. And while Beijing embraces DeepSeek, the West is shutting it out. Take Australia, for example. The government just banned the Chinese app from its official devices. Why? Because of security risks. So it's China's rapid AI expansion versus the West's growing resistance. This divide is only getting deeper. Australia's ban is only the beginning. More countries could follow, tightening regulations and scrutinizing AI models that come from China. Meanwhile, Beijing is doubling down. It is focusing on self-reliance, pouring all its resources into homegrown AI models. And caught in the middle of all of this is Sam Altman. So his tour is not just about partnerships or damage control. This tour is about survival. OpenAI is battling for survival. Lawsuits, regulatory issues, open source models. It is grappling with everything. And Sam Altman does not plan on backing down. He knows the future of AI is not in building the best model. The future is in controlling the narrative, earning the trust of governments, and securing the biggest markets. So that's what he is set out to do. Billionaire, prince of racehorsing, philanthropist, spiritual leader, His Highness, the Aga Khan had many titles. He died at the age of 88, leaving millions in mourning. After receiving the title in 1957, he became the spiritual leader of the world's 15 million Ismaili Muslims. Since then, the Aga Khan has built a billion-dollar empire, but his most lasting legacy are his many charities. They run hundreds of hospitals, educational and cultural projects across the globe. Our next report tells you more.
Prince Karim al-Husseini was just a student at Harvard when fate intervened. His grandfather broke tradition, ignoring the established line of succession, skipping his own son, and instead appointing a young man for a new age. At just 20 years old, he became the Aga Khan. The title, derived from Turkish and Persian, means commanding chief. But this was no ordinary title. The Aga Khan is believed to be a direct descendant of Prophet Muhammad. And as such, he became the Imam of the Ismaili Muslims, a branch of Shia Islam with a global following of 15 million. Born in Geneva in 1936 to a British socialite and a playboy Pakistani diplomat, he was raised in Switzerland before studying Islamic history at Harvard. Just 3 years after taking on his spiritual duties, he acquired a racehorsing empire, one that was built by his grandfather and father. He rose to prominence as a top racehorse owner and breeder across multiple countries. His greatest triumph, Shergar, once the most famous and most valuable racehorse in the world. However, the horse was kidnapped in 1983 and its whereabouts still remain unknown. The Aga Khan went on to have a jet-set lifestyle himself, marked by private planes, yachts, skiing in the Winter Olympics and multiple marriages. But his most profound legacy? The Aga Khan Development Network. It works in 30 countries, employs over 90,000 people, building schools, hospitals, and providing electricity to several regions across Africa and Asia. He's helped finance the reconstruction of Bosnia's Ottoman-era Mostar Bridge, which was destroyed during the Balkan Wars. He also funded the restoration of Aleppo's majestic citadel and the Humayun tomb in Delhi. Yet his philanthropic work wasn't without controversy. It brought him into direct conflict with the Taliban, who accused him of brainwashing young men and women through his efforts. Beyond charity, his net worth is estimated between $1 billion to $13 billion. This is from family inheritance, horse breeding, tourism and real estate. He also owned a $200 million super yacht and a private island in the Bahamas. He also had an enviable collection of over 1,000 years of Islamic art, one of the world's largest and most valuable. Since his death, condolences have poured in from across the globe, including from world leaders, royals and others. But as the world mourns his passing, the question remains: who will carry the mantle of the Aga Khan? His legacy is vast, woven into the fabric of philanthropy, faith and culture. From racehorses to monumental restoration projects, his influence will be felt for generations to come. But now, as the Aga Khan is laid to rest in Lisbon, a new chapter begins. The torch passes, as it always does, to the next in line.
Let's turn to India now. Have you ever seen advertisements for mutual funds? Well, chances are you have. It's impossible to miss them on TV. So what is it that stood out for you? It's always a man who gets the investment advice. Very rarely is it a woman. Perhaps our ad gurus should think about changing that, because India's investment landscape is changing. Let me show you the data from NSE, that's the National Stock Exchange. Almost 25% of the investors in India's stock market are women. This number has risen 6.8 times since 2015. It was around 22% in 2022, and this is a very impressive figure. It means 1 in 4 investors is a woman. Delhi leads the trend with 30% participation. Maharashtra is second with 28%, and Tamil Nadu is third with over 27%. And these states are doing pretty well. But some, like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, are not. In UP, women investors make up just 18% of the total. In Bihar, they make up only 15%. And that's where work needs to be done. Tonight, let's take a closer look at these numbers. Why are they significant? Why have they risen? And what should we do next? It is significant because of the context. Globally, investment has been a male-dominated field. In India, even more so. Men are seen as the decision makers when it comes to investment. But that's not the only reason. To invest, you need money. Indian women own less than 30% of the national wealth. This is much lower than the global average, which is over 40%. Both these reasons kept Indian women away from the stock market: conservative thought and lack of funds. So what is changing now? For starters, more women are earning money. Look at the labor participation rate for women. It was 23% in 2017. It rose to more than 41% in 2023. More women earners equals more likely investors. So that is one reason. Beyond that, interest in the markets is rising anyway. More and more Indians are putting their money in stocks. Just look at the number of demat accounts. These are special accounts that you need to buy and hold stocks, demat accounts. India had just 39 million demat accounts in 2019. Now we have 185 million. As they say, the rising tide lifts all boats. Which brings us to the final question. What is the next goal? Obviously, to go even higher. Women must make up more than half of all investors. Only then can we bridge the wealth gap. But how do we do that? The first priority is to improve financial literacy. Only 21% Indian women are financially literate, but the global average is 30%. So clearly there is scope to improve here. Earning alone is not a guarantee that you will invest. If you don't know about it, investing can be intimidating. Look at this report from 2023. It said that 49% Indian women were not investing. These are people who earn money, yet they did not invest their funds anywhere. Compare this to the United States, where 71% of the women are invested. So financial literacy is very important. Equally important is breaking stereotypes and myths. Men don't have a biological advantage in investments. That is a myth. It is just conditioning and access to knowledge. Our ads and campaigns have reinforced those false beliefs. Changing them could make a big difference. Almost 11 tons. That's how much kimchi was confiscated by a single airport last year. Kimchi is a traditional side dish in South Korea. It is a must-have with meals. So passengers carry it with them. But last year, almost 11 tons of it was sacrificed on the altar of airport food rules. That is roughly 3,500 cabbages left behind at security checkpoints. And this story is not unique. The world over, all kinds of foods are seized at airports, from pickles in India to turkey gravy or peanut butter in the US. Our next report tells you more.
This is the era of high-security air travel. Many travelers have fallen foul of the food rules in airports as they're made to forcibly part with a drink here and a snack there on their way to a flight. And apparently, kimchi is one of these outlawed items. Kimchi is a staple of every Korean dinner table. It's a traditional dish made with salted and fermented vegetables. It's a must-have side dish in the country, so passengers often carry it while traveling. And South Korea's Incheon International Airport has been cracking down on the item. Officials at the airport seized about 11 tons of kimchi last year. This dish is often made from Napa cabbage. A single head weighs about 3 kilograms. So 11 tons of it is roughly 3,500 cabbages left behind at security checkpoints. This may as well be labeled a blasphemy in South Korea. So why is so much kimchi being confiscated by the airport? Because kimchi comes soaked in a spicy sauce, meaning for airport authorities it counts as a liquid. And like many airports around the world, they ban liquids exceeding 100 milliliters in carry-on luggage. But kimchi is hardly the only victim of airport rules. Last year, South Korea banned a seasoning mix with cult popularity, Trader Joe's Everything But the Bagel Mix. This product is only sold in the US. It's gone viral on social media, so it's a popular souvenir for travelers. But South Korea has deemed it illegal. In fact, one South Korean blogger brought back 20 bottles of the seasoning. The bottles came out of the luggage conveyor belt with locks on them, and they were later confiscated by the officials. Now, there are signs all over the airport warning travelers against bringing back the mix. Why? Because it contains poppy seed, which is banned in Korea. But Korea is not the only country hungry to seize banned food from passengers. Last year, amid the Thanksgiving travel rush, the US stalked Turkey quite literally. They warned that passengers will be able to go through with turkey stuffing, but just that. The gravy along with it will have to stay at home. And before there was turkey, in 2023, there was peanut butter. The US Airport Authority said that peanut butter is a liquid, so it must follow the 100 ml limit. And the internet was not so nuts about it. In India, passengers have to be careful while carrying oil, ghee or pickles when travelling by air, because again, liquid limits. And while bottles of jam or honey might still be permitted, a jar of pickle might not be allowed in hand baggage, mainly due to security reasons over being highly flammable. While air travellers everywhere have to tread on eggshells when it comes to liquid bans, in 2017, an Italian airport lifted the ban on one liquid, pesto. They set up special scanners for pesto alone. But if you're going green over this one exception, remember airport food violations exist all over the world, and these cost passengers dearly. For instance, in 2022, a security dog sniffed out 2 McMuffins in a passenger's luggage at an Australian airport. The passenger was fined more than $1,800. In a separate incident a few days earlier, a woman was hit with a similar fine in the country after she forgot to declare a leftover Subway sandwich which she had bought in Singapore. So maybe it's best to make flying less of a guessing game, and an expensive one at that, by going through the airport guidelines before your travels. Because clearly, some foods just won't fly.
Donald Trump loves a press conference. When he holds one, he inevitably drops a bomb. Yesterday, it was his plan for Gaza. After announcing it, he took questions from the media. One of the questions was asked by an Afghan journalist, a female reporter with a typical Afghan accent. She narrated the hardships of Afghan women, the crackdowns by the Taliban. She asked Trump if he had any plans for her country. His response? "Your voice is beautiful, but I couldn't understand a word of what you said." It's a flashback to Trump's first term, when his press conferences became comic relief. Take a look.
Do you have any plan to change Afghanistan situation? Are you able to recognize Taliban? Because I'm an Afghan journalist, Afghan suffered woman. Any comment about Afghanistan? What's your future plan for Afghan people, especially Afghanistan?
I have a little hard time understanding you. Where are you from? Oh. Actually, it's a beautiful voice and a beautiful accent. The only problem is I can't understand a word you're saying. But I just say this, good luck. Live in peace. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead. He was the founder and leader of ISIS. He died like a dog. He died like a coward. The world is now a much safer place. China has total respect for Donald Trump and for Donald Trump's very, very large brain. He said, Donald Trump, go ahead in the back. Who are you or where are you from? Yeah, you. Guy looks like he's shocked. That's not, this is going to be not good.
It's going to be good,
The guy
sir.
looks totally like stunned. Have you ever been picked before for a question?
Yes, sir, but not from President of the
Go
United
ahead.
States.
Go ahead. Give me a
Thank you very much.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi takes a holy dip, offering prayers at the Mahakumbh. A new wave of anti-corruption protests spread across Serbia. And move over Super Bowl. The Puppy Bowl is here. 142 rescue puppies take take part in the cutest competition of the year. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1907, the world's first synthetic plastic was invented. It was called bakelite. This ushered the age of plastic. It was used to make everything from jewelry to washing machines. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We will see you tomorrow.
Check out the rough end zone. Plus, Bart Kent has a hold of Lex Woofer's collar.
I guess that mohawk isn't.
Face the consequences. Alice, you know you're guilty.
Just bandana. Energy today. And there goes Maya. She's come down with a case of the zoomies. It looks like the entire rough team is at the water bowl. How